Yo, 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 ladies and gentlemen, it's Thursday, it's December 16th, it's 2010, and this is Day 9, daily number 230. Whoops, I was 100 behind, but that's okay because I said it right the second time. Oh my god. Normally this is where I do this intro babble and talk about other non-StarCraft related things, but oh my god, I'm bringing the chair down, getting intimate with you. You guys, psst, you guys. Hey, you guys, Huck's incredible. At this game, how's he so good? Oh my god, this game is absurd. He said, poking himself in the eye with his glasses. It's so good. Oh my god, this game is absurd. Now, I'm not actually spoiling anything by saying that. This game is actually unbelievable because I think this is an amazing example of how I, before this game, had a total misperception of when it was time to give up. You'll know exactly what I mean when we see the game. But I do have to make the following announcements. Root Gaming Tournament right after this daily. If you're watching on the archives, Root Gaming Tournament round of 8, Sen vs. Machine and Torrent vs. Sake happening in the archives somewhere in the nearby location. Also, I have done some casts for some leaked in-house Blizzard tournament replays, so those will be uploaded while winter break is going on. In other words, while I am not going to be doing any casts. So you can definitely tune in to find out who is the best Blizzard North American office player. Bam. And I'm going to the EG Masters Cup in Phoenix, Arizona tomorrow, so definitely tune into that. I believe it's going to be at djwheat.tv, but I actually just found out through the forum. They didn't even tell me this. I read a forum to find out that it's actually going to be on g4tv.com, so you can tune in there. In other exciting news, I'm going to be getting my carpal pillow tunnel. Yes, getting the pillow out. Oh, that's right. I totally have like the 70s pimp style suitcase luggage pillowcase flavor. It's just these giant orange and brown like spheres. My entire bedding's like that too, which you'll see when I do that 200th episode special of A Day in the Life of Day 9. It hasn't happened yet. I have no idea when it'll happen, but it'll happen, so don't worry about it. Let's go into the game. We loosen up my shoulders. Oh yeah, we're gonna be watching I'm Junwi Parm. You know, I would imagine this was intended to be Prime, but you'll notice that it's actually not Junwi Prime. It's Junwi Parme. Sounds like something I would try in Text Twist just to see if I could get it. And of course we have Liquid Huck. Yay, Huck. Woo! Who's been providing me countless hours of entertainment while I eat macaroni and cheese at home, doing work. Leave that stream open. Watch him do the pwnering. He is spawning in the top right as the blue Protoss pieces. He's so good. Ugh! You're going to see exactly what I mean. This game's a doozy, so we're going to hit the plus button. Now, we're going to pause, and we're going to think about the two unbelievably important concepts for the day. The first one, transitioning back into something normal. Allow me to celebrate that with a Coca-Cola. Now, see, there's the straw here. There's a straw, but you're not going to find out what restaurant I went to. Isn't this just seductive right now? Oh, that's good. Let's go ahead and talk about those two important concepts of the day. First of all, transitioning back into something normal. People tend to think of the game like this, when really the game is more like an X. They think of the game like a V, where the beginning is the bottom point, and then it just expands out into more and more possibilities. But in reality, it's a lot more like an X, where there's a lot of possibilities at the start of the game, converges right to my forearms in the middle, mid-game convergence, getting back to the same spot again and again, and then it fans back out again into the craziness of the late game. Always think about getting back on track to the middle, because once you've planted that stick in the ground, it's a lot easier to think. It's first big concept. Second big concept, how to not die. Oh my god, because I thought Huck was super duper duper ultra mad crazy hella dead. Let's figure out how he avoids doing such things. Those are the two things I want to keep on the brain. Likewise, I want to be doing a little bit of Zergy focus by watching I Am Junwi Parme do his fanciness. He is going to open up with a 7 pool. This is not Root Cats playing. This is a tip-top player, Junwi Parme. A lot of people like to tease Cats for being, quote, overly creative, but honestly, Cats is doing a lot of things like a month ago that now a lot of good people are doing. all of which are insane and crazy and result in him having a lot of silly, comical losses on his account. But once you flesh it out, you're going to see a lot of awesomeness come out of him. So yes, yes indeed. Oh, I'm just spewing compliments all over these North American players. Go Cats, go Huck, go everyone in Root Gaming, everyone who, of course, is involved in the Root Gaming tournament that'll be happening after this. Looks like Huck is doing some good old chrono boosting. He's very well known for loving gateways on 14. Oh, yeah, even has a 15th probe queued up. Could perhaps be going for some sort of delayed expand. Yeah, it looks like he's going to be doing a little bit of mining. He's going to be sending the probe up. And this is a very smart move by Junwi Prime. He just does the patrolling here to try to bait a probe to build a pylon there, but it does not actually happen. Now, let's pause for a moment. Dun, dun, dun! Go into the Huck cam. What is this? A finished pool? 3 Zerglings en route? Oh my god. I do not know what the Canadian curse language is, but Huck almost certainly said something like, beavers. That's probably what the Canadian folks say. Maple leaves. They get really angry. This is very standard, right? When you're scouting your opponent and you just see something that you're kind of, in your gut, you go to that, sort of feeling. The whole reason I bring that up, again, is to note this idea of mid-game convergence, bouncing back to the mid-game, getting back on your same track, right? So here's going to come some crisis response from Huck. Crisis response, building a gateway and a forge. And it looks like he is going to be building another gateway here. This is, at this point in time, we start to really appreciate how specific this pylon placement is. A lot of people just sort of haphazardly throw the pylon like here or something, so they can build a gateway and a forge, but they can't quite squeeze another building in between there. But we can see very, very nice positioning here. Pylon just allowing enough space. I do think that Huck should probably be continuing to make probes at this point in time. Very, very good to do so. Now, immediately we're going to see some good stuff that Huck does, starting with this cannon placement. There we go. Cannon doesn't just defend the ramp for the immediate threat of the 4 pool, but of course, excuse me, the 7 pool. Whoops, wrong game. Unless, of course, you want to kill 2 of your drones and then make a spawning pool. But this not only will defend this front area, but will also defend down here. So he's just going to be taking some hits right on back to making probes, and the usual sort of good decision-making with that pylon placement, planting the pylon back here to spot the destructible rocks. There is a zealot coming out. Do want to put that zealot up at the front door, not away at the back side, so of course it can even attack at all. So let's go back to Camp Zerg and see exactly what Zerg is doing. Now, obviously, if you see this, like 99% of the time, your opponent will not really have a gas geyser, or will not even be far in the gas really seen at the moment. In other words, he's just not going to have any guys coming at you. There's going to be no warp gate, no tech threat. You are free to do whatever you want. Isn't this interesting to see this Zerg player comfortably transitioning? There's the expansion, and notice how unbelievably safe he is. And this is an extremely, extremely early queen for Zerg, so he'll be able to do the speetage quite easily. There's the cybernetics core coming down right now. Double gas up right now for Liquid Huck. Now, in this particular circumstance, what do you go for, right? You heard me talk about that gut feeling where, of course, all Canadians are just like, rotting beaver furs. They curse and say the horrible things that are outlawed in most of Quebec. At that point in time, you should always know what your mid-game plan is. Now, assuming that no craziness happened, what do most Protoss players do? Or if you've been watching Huck stream, what does Huck do? He likes going 3 gateway with warp gate. Then he expands off those 3 warp gates. Then he gets a forge and begins upgrading, and then gets more gateways. That's just a good, that's almost borderline early game, but you know what, we'll just still call it the mid game. We'll call it his goal. That's his stake he's shoved in the ground. That's what he's gonna go for. 3 warp gate into expand, and then a forge and more gateways. Very easily stated. So when all of a sudden, this misery of a 6 pool, a 7 pool ends up locking you up in your ramp, sure, he's gonna make a few of these zealots. Sure, he is going to end up getting this chrono boost on the warp gate because that's going to return him back to his usual plan. Now, in terms of the ordering of other elements, right? In terms of the ordering of other elements, normally you get 1 zealot and then all sentries and then expand. Since we don't really have that much gas, we can get the zealots first and then we can get all the sentries. Coca-Cola, yay, Coca-Cola. I like never drink soda, so this is quite a treat for me. Now here comes the tragic part. Huck must kill off one of his forges. But, as we're going to see, this is actually very, very good planning on his part, right? We're going to actually see in a moment. Let's actually speed this thing up. I'm actually going to go to hyper warp speed, because this is such a fun little thing to notice. Yeah, look at this force. This is the usual pushing force for most Protosses. And then once we get to around here, Forge going down. Hey, look, 3 gateways. Hallucinate is going down. We're going to ignore it. But we also see Junwi Prime is going for his 2 base. He's going for a very fast layer. This game looks like your usual business. I almost always point out when the game begins to look normal again, because that is the biggest struggle for players trying to get to the really good level, is getting to that normal point. I see a lot of players who will try to do some funky business, and then they will have some sort of ad-libbed on-the-fly transition that they've never thought about before, because they're like, it seems pretty good, let's just give it a shot, yeah. And then they end up just completely nuking themselves in the foot. Want to have a very clear plan of what is your goal, so that way you can go right back on track. And we even notice from the food counts, Huck is a little bit behind, but for the most part, is pretty much where he wants to be. There's the chrono boosting going on. Here is the Forge about to finish. Now, let's talk a little bit about strategy at this point. Now that we've gotten past that early phase of the contain, the 7 pool, and now we're to this point, we can start thinking about strategy. The only last thing I want to note is that even though Huck destroyed that Forge, and that may have seemed like an unwise decision on his part, I actually think that that is the smartest building to have knocked down, because again, we wanted to go 3 Warp Gate expand. If we killed off this gateway and kind of went gateway, Forge, notice how that clashes with our usual standard opening. I mean, this can really help your decisions be clear, because a lot of people will say, all right, I have 2 gateways and a Forge, walling myself off. Which one do I kill off? Well, I guess I should kill the gateway, because I normally have a lot of those anyways, and the Forge could start an upgrade earlier. Well, maybe I should kill the gateway. Well, I don't know. The Forge not really using right now. They do all this immediacy sort of stuff. What was your original plan to begin with? 3 Warp Gate, expand, and then a Forge. Sweet. Kill off the Forge so you can go 3 Gateway, expand, and then a Forge. Ain't that easy? Isn't it so cool to know exactly what you want to do eventually, as opposed to what I want to do right now? If I know clearly in my head a visualization of where I want to be, we just try to find a way to get there. Oh, baby, baby. In the meantime, good old Hucknatoad is going to be throwing down a Phoenix at some point. Yep, there his hallucination just finished. Now this is actually a very interesting little switcheroo-ha that tons of players have been doing now. Like lots and lots have been going for a fast hallucinate to scout with the Phoenixes. Now there's nothing wrong with doing this. There's nothing ultra right about doing this. It can definitely help you. This is kind of a stylistic choice, and I want to talk about the differences between this and then other Protoss strategies. So let's begin with the other Protoss strategies first. In particular, I'm going to take a player who everyone should know, TT1 from the Team Fnatic MSI. TT1 is the sort of player who goes for like a 6 Warp Gate push and is really aggressive with those Warp Gate units. He can't really scout his opponent, though, because he doesn't have a robo and he doesn't have the hallucination. So why is this okay? What TT1 thinks to himself is, I'm going to dump so much money into having such a huge push that it's going to force Zerg away from doing a certain set of things. If Zerg expands too much, the attack kills him. If Zerg tries to power drones too much and then go Mutalisks, TT1 attacks the front and then just kills them. If a Zerg player tries to be really aggressive early on, he holds and then he pushes back and kills them. There's this very thin strip of strategies that can hold off those 6 Warp Gate pushes. Some big Roach play, some Mutaling Spinecrawler play, some Hydra play, these sorts of things. In a sense, he's saying, well, I'm not going to scout for A versus B versus C. I am just going to know that my attack will kill A and B, so I'm really only going to have to worry about late-game scenarios against C, right? He limits the set of options just by how forceful he is. So that contrasts with what Huck is doing, which is saying, well, let me actually scout with a Phoenix to find out exactly what you are doing, and then do some sort of super skewed response. So, for instance, oh my gosh, he's making a lot of roaches. I will immediately build a robo and start getting immortals. Just 3 gate immediately into immortals. Or you might see a Spire going down, and then immediately throw down 2 Stargates and begin going Phoenixes. These sorts of things. However, the huge thing I want to note is that you kind of want to be in one of those 2 strategy buckets strictly, right? You either want to be aggressive and limiting his options, or scouting and responding with very clear plans of how you're going to respond. Too often, people will do something like say, well, I'm going to start going 6 Warp Gate push the way TT1 does, but let me go 5 Warp Gate in a robo, just so I can make sure, just so I can double check a couple of things before I push. So what happens? They scout with the Observer, and then they don't do any deviations, right? They scout and they go, okay, I see what he's doing. Well, I'm still going 5 Warp Gate. So that basically means that the Observer didn't help you make any new decisions. It just kind of helped you feel comfortable. Or what happens is you get there with the Observer and you go, yeah, time to push, and you have a 5 Warp Gate push that could have been a 6 Warp Gate push. It's really bad to do something in between. So again, you want to force them by being crazy huge with some aggression, or you want to respond and have some very clear responses set up. So whenever I see this sort of Phoenix play, we see him saying, okay, is he expanding en masse? What tech pattern is he going to? Okay, that can be kind of noteworthy. Okay, there's a Hydralisk Den going down. Seeing a lot of these Spine Crawlers. This is almost always an indication that he's going to be going Mutalisk. Probably like 80% of the time players do this and then go Mutalisks. Or he could be doing something super powery. So, I mean, in my eyes, I want to be checking for a lot of evolution chambers. We do see that there's a Hydralisk Den going down right now. So again, a Huck is going to do the most reasonable response upon seeing the Hydralisk Den. He is going to instantly get a Robo and begin going for a Colossus. I'm cheating a little because I have actually seen this early stage of the game, so I know how he's going to respond. So that's fine. It's fine. I'm just going to say it right off the bat. We're going to kind of see it come to fruition. There's the plus attack upgrade that is oh so essential for those Colossi. It's very nice to be able to kill Zerglings in 2 hits, or excuse me, 1 hit instead of 2 with the Colossus. Very important to get that +2 attack. Now I want to talk a little bit about what Junwi is going to be doing. Yeah, by the way, you see that there's a Robotics Den right here. There's a Colossus Den going down. We suddenly see Junwi Prime throwing a hatch down and another hatch. And he's going Mutalisk with tons of drones. Look at the unit counting station, 61. This is a pretty typical style of Zerg play, which is to just go Mutalisks with your gas and then expanding with your money. And we even see Junwi Prime now building the clown nose at the south happy face, getting 2 extractor eyes on the happy face as well before it even ends up finishing. Not that many Zerglings out. Junwi does get the Zergling speed upgrade. Very important upgrade to just sort of have around, but he is not exactly going to be massing up the Zerglings. He's going to have this very nice Spine Crawler placement, so that way he can do a kill zone right here. If he has them all flush with the ramp, it's very easy to get an arc with Stalkers and deal damage to all of them. This is very good placement, and it covers the ramp too. And we're going to see some real insanity come out from Junwi. Look at that. Another expansion going down. Think about his choices of expansion. This one is very natural. It's at the back door, but in particular, it's far away from the opponent. The next 2 expansions, this one at the bottom right, this one at the top left, I guarantee you Junwi doesn't need all 3 of those bases up. He's expanding very far out to extremely different attack path expansions. Because he basically is saying, yeah, if you kill 1, I'm still going to have 2 left over. Yeah. The only thing that Junwi's really defending is his main, with all of these Spine Crawlers. He's going to be defending it with his life, right? He's going to be ultra committing. Nothing ever came out of this Hydralisk Den. We're going to see Huck actually throw down an expansion here. And I'm going to leave the resource counting station open at key points in this game, just to point out how my mind is frickin' blown. So suddenly, Mutalisks come in, and Huck almost certainly kind of did a what the heck kind of moment, going, well, I thought you were going Hydra. You're supposed to be going Hydra. Look, here's my range upgrade for my Colossus. But Junwi's just marching right on in here. And in the meantime, some Zerglings are picking away at the front. This is a very common technique you'll see Huck do in all of his games, splitting up the Zealot Sentry force from the Stalker force. The Zealots and Sentries are about the same speed. Stalkers are a lot faster, so Stalkers can kind of do crisis control. But he's leaving the Zerglings and the Stalkers at the front, so, excuse me, the Zealots and Sentries at the front, because he wants to be able to pick off Zerglings. The Colossus is out as well. There's the Twilight Council going down. And Huck begins to make a lot of gateways. Now, at this point in the game, I actually thought that Huck was dead. Completely, totally dead. He's doing the huge amount of cannons at the back of the main. Anytime you want to begin moving out and expanding, just build way more cannons at the back of your base. The more you want to be moving out aggressively, the more you should be building cannons at the back of your base. The more expansions you take, the more cannons you should be building at the back of your base, especially if you've seen mutas. Now, I want to note a couple of things. In the resource station, we see Junwi skyrocketing ahead. He's getting queens at all his bases. This one has really good saturation. His main is pretty well saturated. His natural is pretty well saturated. He has 5 bases up. 2 of them aren't really running, but he has a lot up. And this Mutalist force of his is getting huge. 17 Mutalists. Now at the back, oh my gosh, it's going to be able to pick off the Twilight Council, and this gets taken down. Now, this is the part in the game where, myself included, this is where the slow dwindle death occurs. Where I just kind of think to myself, oh god. Oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting Mutalists. Oh, how long do I have to live? I mean, look at the Huck cam. Huck he is feeling a lot of pressure, and he isn't even aware of how much pressure he's under with this base and this base up and running. Again, notice the mineral excess from Junwi, so he's spending all of that getting extra gas. He's going to be opting for geysers over minerals at all these bases. Pretty typical stuff coming out of him. In the main, we don't have any extra Evo chambers going down. We do have that +2 air attack. And Huck is just going to be expanding. Now, it sounds obvious for me to say he's just going to expand, but I have such deep admiration for our good friend Chris Larange, a.k.a. Liquid Hook. Huck is going to say, I want to expand, and that's all he's going to be thinking for an extremely long time. I like to think of myself as a pretty calm decision maker in game. Oh, yes, I love to think that, oh, yes, Day 9, when he plays, oh, he thinks so clearly. Oh, no, I want to go for an expansion. Oh, well, clearly the expansion decision is not going to work. I should definitely just try to counterattack and win now. And most of the time when I do that, that feels like calm, collected decision making to me. Let me just do this scenario explicitly. I'll be in Huck's position, and I'll be thinking to myself, yeah, you know what, I'm going to kind of go for this expansion, but then he'll start harassing me back here. I'll kind of come back, and I'll try to defend a little bit, and then I'll try to expand again, and then he'll be harassing me again, and I'll have to cancel. And maybe after 2 or 3 of those, I think to myself, I'm screwed. I haven't gotten this expansion up, and I kind of needed to. It's really time to mount up to do a huge attack. And that feels so not impulsive for me. But what is an enormous lesson that I learned in this game that we're about to see is that Huck is going to stay very committed to the one goal of taking this expansion and not dying. It's actually marvelous to see him do this. This is just great stuff. Again, splitting up the Zealots and the Sentries with the Stalkers. Ordinarily, I would think you need so many more gateways, but Huck is just sticking to 3 gateways. Just 3. He's adding on 3 more now, but I mean, this Templar Archives came out very fast, and the Blink came out very fast. I thought you needed way more units to be able to pick these Mutalists off. As it turns out, you don't really need a lot, you just need the right set of units. So Huck's going to be losing a ton of probes. Look at the resource differential, 164 to 100. This is when I'm starting to feel a little irritated as Protoss. Again, we're going to contrast my feelings in this situation, and I think that my feelings are pretty typical of a calmish player, versus how Huck responds. And this is where I'm starting to go, ugh, damn it, why didn't I have my Colossi and my Sentries at the front? Alright, cool. Alright, fine. Alright, I'm doing a good job of splitting my stuff up. Looks like, oh, he's going to be able to pick off some of my Stalkers. I maybe could have controlled that better, but hey, at least I got him out of my hair. Junwi is going to be continuing to be aggressive. But I mean, look at this food differential. 172 versus 100. Zergling's trying to run in. Amazing cannon placement. Love that cannon placement. There's the Kadarin Amulet going down. As Huck, I'd be thinking, alright, good. I have my expansion up. Finally. I did a good job of defending. I'm such a superhero. In the meantime, I just want to stop. I mean, I want to spend a lot of time talking from Huck's point of view, but definitely what Zerg is doing is something special, right? This is very cool. To be at the 17-minute mark, to have gotten 5 bases up, almost completely uncontested. And it comes down often to this idea that the best strategy is not when there's nothing more to add to it, it's when there's nothing more to take away from it. I love the days in Terran vs. Zerg when the Terran strategy was to go Marine Marauder, Thor, Hellion with Blue Flame, Banshee, Medevac, Viking. That was kind of the typical mix. It's like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You'd expand and you'd get another barracks, another starport, another factory. It was goofy. But as people are getting better, they just kind of focus in their strategies, and they can end up doing one thing a lot better because they're devoting all their resources into this limited small subset. So we're seeing that Junwi pretty much just got Zergling speed and said, spine crawlers, mutas, expanding. And now he's getting Zerglings and Zergling upgrades and a hive. And, I mean, it's so limited how much he's doing, but we're really seeing how amazingly effective this is. Getting the Zergling upgrades eventually. One thing to note, these are really late upgrades, so this is another way of saying I'm gonna be sticking mainly with the Mutalisks for a while. Until your Zerglings are like 2-2, they're not going to be effective in the late game. 0-0 Zerglings or 1-1 Zerglings are pretty good early game, but around this time, when your Protoss opponent has, you know, Stormers and Zealots with a +1 attack upgrade and is getting more upgrades, or generally should be having more upgrades, those Zerglings are kind of weak, so these upgrades, even though you might feel very high and mighty, you really only have air control. You don't really have amazing ground control. But either way, look at Junwi's resources. This is the part where, when I'm rewatching the replay as Huck, I mean, again, pretending I'm Huck, I would rewatch the replay, and at this point I'd be going, yeah, I'm dead. There's no way. Negative 0% chance of victory. Again, the Blink Stalkers, plus the Templar, Warping in Templar. Notice that we have quite a lot of cannons. We're not just planting cannons to defend the minerals, we're planting cannons to defend the angle. A lot of times you'll see a player put a cannon here and a cannon here, and that's it. But notice that by making this sort of wall of cannons, it zones the Mutalisks into here. It makes them not really want to pass over this region. This is kind of like a wall. If we just have 2 cannons here, the Mutalisks will poke, and then they'll move up here, and they'll swing around, and they'll sort of move down. This is much more effective at zoning, even though I really think Blizzard shouldn't have left this much space up there. Still, you want to create that sort of gentle cup. So then Huck loses his Cybernetics core. As we are seeing in these games, he will be rebuilding his Cybernetics core multiple times. There's some storms going down. Now this is interesting because a lot of people rely just on Blink Stalkers. But, you know, the Storm is still surprisingly effective against the Mutalisks. In Brood War, Storm was really effective against 12 Mutalisks because they would clump up. But it was less effective when you got into those higher numbers, when the Zerg would not have them as clustered. But in StarCraft 2, there'll be like 40 Mutalisks clustered. So, in other words, High Templar in StarCraft 2 are not so good at small clumps of Mutalisks, but are a lot better at big clumps of Mutalisks. So going for some Stalkers plus some Templar turns out to be quite effective. And again, Huck doing some nice zoning here. Wants to keep Mutalisks over here so he can warp in on there. Huck is still way behind in the resource. We see that Huck is broke and at 133, and Junwi is loaded and at 198 food, and is taking bases 6, 7, and 8. Great. He even has some Zerglings getting produced here. He has a lot of Zerglings over here. Alright, cool. Now I'm a little curious, what has Huck seen? This, I think, is a little bit bad by Huck. At this point in the game, this is probably the only thing that I would say that Huck could really be improving on, is more use of that hallucinate. If he was, you know, seeing some Mutalisks up here, he could easily do one hallucinated Phoenix and just poke here, and then poke at these expansions. It helps give you a good sense of where your opponent's at. Now, for the record, anytime your opponent is expanding a lot, you should immediately think to yourself, he cannot make use of those for a very, 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 very long time. I almost always, or actually after years and years of playing Brood War, I've kind of trained myself that whenever I see someone going Expo crazy, just to not freak out. If someone goes Expo crazy, I'll almost always tell myself, okay, he's not going to have a lot of units, and those are not actually going to be useful for a long time. Because again, if you build a Nexus at an expansion, the instant that Nexus finishes, and you haven't mined yet, Thus far, your expansion has been a $400 loss. Your Nexus is nothing more than a 400 mineral paperweight. Until you start mining from it, make back that 400 minerals, make back the minerals that you invested in the workers to mine from it. Only once you've done all that does the expansion actually become useful. So if someone expands a ton, they're actually kind of in a big hole. Notice that only around now is Junwi really making use of this base and this base. He's been making use of this one for a little bit longer, but I mean, really, Junwi does not have nearly as huge an economic stranglehold as we'd like to think. So this is kind of the problem with 1-1 Zerglings against a very high-tech Protoss force. As we see, it just ends up getting killed. And this is probably the part where I begin to want to walk off a building as Protoss, right? I'm just going, oh god, I'm killing off one base, but still, having these cannons in a nice cup. Interestingly enough, not as many gateways as we could normally support. We can normally support 8 or 9 on 3 bases, but Huck is instead going 6 gateways plus cannons. And this really goes to show the whole idea of not overreacting to your opponent. Really not panicking and freaking out. Just very calmly saying, well, alright, if you're going to invest a ton in Mutalisks to be aggressive and harass me, it is okay for me to spend a ton of money trying to be harass-proof. It is okay. By the exact same logic, as a matter of fact, if he's 6 pools, he's so behind on economy, it's okay if I wall off with 3 buildings and then kill one off to exit. It's okay that I do that. That is okay, because he's spending such a huge sacrifice to get those 6 pool Zerglings out fast enough that it's okay for me to spend somewhat of a sacrifice. So I'm watching Huck in this game. I'm just like amazed that he is not dead. Unfortunately, even though he did kill off that expansion, he has a Zerg on 1,000,000 bases. But interestingly, Zerg is mined out at the main and mined out at the natural. He does have like 14 Ultralisks coming up. But Huck's been playing this so calm, so cool, so collected. This is the point in time where I'm honestly kind of convinced that I've lost. Huck has not actually scouted as much, so he doesn't really know that there's like this much stuff on the screen. But he just kind of stayed focused, took this expansion, and now he's going to be trying to take this expansion. Actually, this was a little bit of a blunder for Huck to be trying to move up to this north location while expanding to the bottom right, because obviously the counterattack path is open. If Huck just kind of pushes through here and then kind of goes for this one, I like going for this little hole a little bit more, just because it helps block and protect this expansion a little longer. Generally, when you do the whole attack and expand at the same time thing, you want to attack in a fashion that is in the way of your last expo. Huck doing a lot of more good stuff, kind of leaving some of those Templar and Colossi behind. There's the blink forward, and the holy crap, that's a lot of Ultralisks, I better pull back sort of feeling. And we immediately begin seeing some Immortals get pushed out. So Huck, very calmly, going to be getting another Forge, another Robo. And suddenly, we're seeing that Huck, who was about 100 food behind his opponent, is slowly, methodically clawing his way forward. Now, 81 of the Zerg's food has been in drones this whole game, but still, I genuinely think that almost everyone is dead at this point. It's just kind of uncanny to me that Huck is really still staying in this. Just picking off one expansion at a time, and if you think about it, Huck was at 2 bases when he was against 5, right? He was against the main, the natural, this bottom expansion, this bottom right, and then this top left one. And now at this phase in the game, Huck is basically on 2 base. I guess I would say, yeah, like 1 base, going for a second. But Zerg's actually not running too hot. He has 1 base here, he has this base here, and he has this base here really running. This is just some scraps coming in, and this is basically nothing. So, ooh, Huck accidentally leaves some of those Templar out. They do get picked off. But I am just very, very impressed with this idea of low on gateways, but high on tech, getting a lot of Blink Stalkers and a lot of Templar to defend the Mutalisks, and in particular, a lot of cannons. So easy to convince yourself that you can't make those cannons, that they're too expensive, because then, oh, I can't make out of my 6 gateways. Huck was going on 3 for a really long time. And oh, holy frickin' storms. That's my favorite part about Blink, is that you can rearrange your army very, very easily. And look at that, Huck just blasts through everything, using all the Templar now to get Archons, which are a surprisingly kick-ass unit. Notice that the Archon, when you start really getting up there and the attack upgrades, can just kill Zerglings in one hit. 43 damage a shot. Oh, so good. Coca-Cola. Really fantastic stuff. Getting more upgrades, getting the double robo out, and then here is the Nexus going down. Now, Huck is pushing straight through the middle. I love that, because that defends that expansion from the backside. Junwi did just throw down 86 Zerglings, and even though Huck tried to penetrate here, but couldn't really end up doing it, still, he is defending his whole expansion from being set up. Last time he expanded at that bottom, he got counterattacked by Zerglings and it got killed off. At this point in time, he's really bossing it up with a huge push at the front, and this expansion is so well defended. I just could not believe that Huck was still able to be doing this sort of aggression at this phase in the game. Still kind of note that Zerg is maxed and Huck is not maxed, but Junwi's like broke right now. On an initial viewing of this game, I just could not believe that Huck was still just hanging in there, but it's this incredible patience. This Expo got killed off multiple times before it got up. His main got messed with multiple times. Huck didn't really move out to attack until like the 18-minute mark, but it was a very meaningful, strong attack. Suddenly, with Huck moving farther and farther north, this expansion's looking really shaky. These Zerglings could swing around for a counterattack and almost certainly kill it off. But that's okay. Huck is just going to be does the worst storm known to man. Oh my god, that storm was so terrible. I actually think Huck probably could have killed this off, or at the very least it would have been close, but that was a key miststorm that did maximum damage to his Blink Stalkers. No damage to any Zerg units. The Immortals are darting in. Notice the Immortal does 65 damage when fully upgraded. That is so cool. But now Junwi is not looking nearly as good as before, but still looking incredible. 177 food to 114. Alright, I'm going to begin part 2 of the examination of this game. Part 2. This is... Already I'm kind of like blown away. But part 1, I was kind of going, well, Huck's at like an 80 food deficit. He is in a very tough spot. And now he's kind of at another 80 food deficit. Now, for the record, he's actually messaging me on Skype. Perhaps he wants to come in to say hello. Don't know if his mic's working, but maybe we'll see if we can get his thoughts at the end of the game. You want to come on? He says, Raffle, no, I don't have a mic. Well, feel free to type whatever you want, and I will bring your window in, and I'll show the world. Alright, cool. Let's see if he's up for that. If he's not, whatever. Screw him. We don't need Huck. We don't need to interact with him. We just need to watch his games and use him like a prostitute. That's right. For our entertainment, Huck. Build Stalkers, Huck. Dance. Dance, Huck. Dance. So there's Huck now, throwing down this expansion. Very small amount of units. Zealots are a unit that I'm kind of trying to use a lot more against Zerg, because it's so easy to go into just Stalker mode and be like, oh, I can blink everything, hooray! But I mean, Zealots are just dirt cheap. And once they have that speed upgrade, they're like 10 times more useful, and with the attack upgrade, they're doing 22 damage a pop. I mean, it's pretty awesome how much damage they actually end up doing. So, I mean, trying to use them more, they're so cheap. They're so freaking cheap. This is probably my favorite army, the Mass Gateway plus Immortal army. Just very, very cool. A little bit of disorganization ends up happening here. Quite a bit of disorganization ends up happening here. Really important to keep all that stuff together. And we're going to see Huck continue to just stand strong. Just storming, immortaling, zealoting, trying to keep this Expo alive. There's even an Ultralist drop coming in at the back of his base. Just looking so dismal. Because again, it's like just now 2 bases for Protoss, but more like 1.5, because this one's running dry. Versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 running bases for Zerg. Alright, cool. But this whole, and you know, morphing a lot of things to Archons. I mean, I'm actually going to hold down my Alt key just to show you how little damage Ultras do against Archons. Especially when you have the Immortals there doing a little bit of assistance. The Zerglings just evaporate. Archons, I think, are a very underused unit against Zerg in the late game. Especially one of these players going for the Zergling Ultralist stuff. Because look at that. Huck's rapidly closing the gap. Oh, this is so cool. Zealot, Templar, Immortal, Archon. Yes, getting off the money storms. Always good to have a gateway wall off. Very common in Brood War. Also very common now in StarCraft 2. Good stuff. You know, I actually thought that Protoss needed more money to be able to defend against the Zerg. I actually genuinely thought that. But as it turns out, no. Zerg just needs to go into power overwhelming mode and really stick to it. A couple of observers kind of hanging out in a pair. Now, I would like to re-emphasize that if I were playing this game, first of all, I would have already left. I actually would have left a lot earlier. But we're seeing Huck stay in here and just play very slow. I don't mean slow in a bad way. He's just waiting. He's picking his spots carefully. Hell, there's a base here, right? When Huck's base is here. And he is just very carefully, patiently moving out slowly. I think that this was a little bit of a misstep at this point. To push this way with nothing left here to defend. If there were some cannons and like 2 Templar tucked back there, I wouldn't have as much of a problem. But it looks like Huck will be pulling back. And this is just such a nice little army mix. If you can get a lot of these really high efficiency units, the Templar, the Archons, and the Immortals out, that is going to be great, great news. But, you know, I've even been watching a lot of Huck's stream, and Huck just stays in the game a lot longer than your average bear would. And as a result, ends up winning. You know, some of the games he'll still end up losing, but, you know, there's some games where it's just like, wow, I did not actually know it was normal to be winning there. I did not know it was normal for a 2-basing Protoss to be able to give a 5-basing Zerg this much trouble. Now, Junwi is finally starting to do some of the things that I think he should have done a lot earlier. Nidus worming, doing a lot of these drops. Instead, it was Zerg just sort of expanding. The Mutalisks were doing a great job of pummeling Protoss into the ground, but, you know, really kind of let up on the whole harassment. Huck got the chance to reconsolidate his army. Now Huck's having to split up his army. We see a bunch of units going back into the main, and these the rest of these units actually almost get picked off. Of course, the fact that the Zealots, Immortals, and Archons are so good, they end up doing way, way more damage. But Huck's staying calm. A lot of army splitting. Very important to split your armies at this phase of the game. Very, very, very important to be doing lots and lots of army splitting. That is one benefit of the Warp Gate, is that if you end up splitting them at improper amounts, you can just easily re-warp back in. There's the 3rd Cybernetics core that Liquid Huck is making in this game. Looks like there's absolutely no Nidus Worm here. Okay, now Zerg's actually starting to run dry. Zerg's mining himself out on this base. Huck's actually hanging in strong. Go, Super Huck. And around this point in the game, I was starting to realize, because I was watching this game and I was watching Huck's stream, I'm starting to realize that we're beginning to learn more about food differentials in StarCraft 2. In Brood War, it was very typical for Zerg to be pretty far behind the other two in food. In a Zerg vs. Terran, a 70-food Zerg against a 100-food Terran was a very even game, and likewise for Zerg vs. Protoss. In StarCraft 2, it seemed to be that even food generally meant even gameplay, but now we're starting to see that when the Zerg pulls way ahead, Protoss can still be okay. Not just in the case where he's going mass Mutalisk and mass Zergling, but especially in the cases where the Zerg is going for the mass Roach sort of mix. The Zergs will get max extremely quickly and will end up having to burn all their money on a bunch of spine crawlers. They can free up food to do more useful things. But a max Zerg army is actually not particularly scary. It's the 300 food army when they send a huge attack and then rally an outrageous amount of production, and to do a lot of these sort of hit and run tactics. So Huck is just expanding now. At this point, I was starting to really go, oh my gosh, Huck can win, because if Huck gets this expansion up, it's going to be again a 2-basing Protoss against basically a 2.5 basing Zerg. I don't really consider this to be a full up and running expansion. In the unit counting station, Zerg still has 76 drones. I'm trying to find where all of them are, but, you know, I guess they're just very, very, very spread out. So again, another drop in the main. Huck's pulling all sorts of stuff back. My favorite kind of style of blink where you rearrange. But here is the one key misstep. Oh my goodness, not having the armies split up properly. Uh-oh, whoopsie doopsie daisies. Trying to morph in as many Zealots and Templar as he can. The main was ultra easily defended, but the bottom expansion really not looking good at all. And here ends up being, I think this was just, this I think was the key mistake of the entire game. This is what really, I think clearly I would say, Huck is very, very far behind at this point, because he really has one expansion about to dry up. Huck even saying that the creep tumor at the bottom right is so annoying. Yep, that creep tumor at the bottom right prevented Huck from expanding quite a lot. But I mean, this really kind of goes to emphasize the idea of mental focus and exhaustion. In a game like this, it can be very tiring. I don't know why this is so tiring, but to just, like, remember to split your forces up in a way that can defend this and you can hold off your main. The whole reason that Huck ended up holding this off so easily is because he just went 1A and just brought everything up into the main. And it looks like Huck just paused for some reason and Junwi Prime went, ooh. But now Huck really doesn't have any running bases. So suddenly the fact that he's 100 food behind apparently becomes relevant again. But honestly, I had no idea that it was possible to withstand such an outrageous amount of stuff from Zerg. I mean, Zerg is having so much resources. He was at like 5,000 in the bank and maxed 15 Ultras being built at once and still having like 3K left in the bank. Just insane. Now, again, you heard me say this right at the start of the game. You heard me say that I like to think of myself as kind of a calm decision maker. That I'll hit a point where I'll go, oh, you know what? I am just so dead. Probably going to have to go ahead and move out and attack. This is one of those parts, right? This part where right when my Nexus dies, I'd probably be thinking to myself, all right, well, I don't really have any running bases. I guess I got to do something right now. If I just sit around and wait for my Nexus to finish, that might not be good enough. But I really think that, you know, Huck has been doing that consistently all game long, and that I'm starting to realize that there's no reason not to do that. Because again, this counterattack manages to pick it off. And this, I actually think, is what Zerg kind of wanted Huck to do all game long, is to do some air, and then do a big counterattack, so that way all the Zerg macros could end up taking effect. And there's the final good game. But really, up until maybe 3 minutes ago, I could not believe how fine you can be as Protoss. I mean, this whole having to re-expand here is really tragic. It's such a frowny tragedy. And Huck, since you're watching, if you want to provide any last thoughts on this game about what you could have done better or worse, or if you even agree that this little expansion dying was the key moment. And of course, StarCraft 2 decides that I really did want to restart the game. No, that's actually not true. I'll end up moving forward to around the 30-minute mark. Yeah, I mean, at this point in the game, just defending, building some cannons, picking this off, could have just been the key to success. And so often, I mean, I'd say actually that most Zerg players never even get to this point. They either have already won with a whole bunch of Mutalisks, or have already lost to some goofy timing push. And I really think this is a great example of a Zerg transitioning well out of that whole Mutalisking phase. I just had absolutely no idea. And I guess it really is true that you just don't need that many unit-producing structures. This almost reminds me a lot of the late-game PvZ from Brood War, especially when you start to get Reavers and Templar into those mix. It was just so hard to deal with it as Zerg, except for the just masses of units, the good old 300 foods of units. So Huck says, God kills me to watch myself die. Huck says, yes, I agree. I didn't play as good as I should have. And I also want to emphasize that attitude by Huck is actually good. And when I say attitude, I don't mean his attitude, he's a tough guy, he's got attitude. I mean like the mindset of, God, I hate watching myself botch that sort of stuff. It's good to be really hard on yourself. A classic example I always use with myself is that whenever I'm Protoss or Terran and I rewatch one of my replays, I just sit over my Nexus and see if I'm constantly making probes. And every time I don't make a probe, I sit in my room and go, oh, I'm the worst player in the universe. I can't believe, oh, I'm so terrible, unbelievable, oh, I'm the worst. And that's good. You should do that. When you win a game, it's fun to be nice to yourself and be like, yeah, all right. You know, when I beat a good player, I'll rewatch the replay and be like, oh, yeah, I'm the man. But then I'll rewatch it again and start going, okay, and now how am I the worst player in the universe? Oh, I forgot a probe at 61 food again. By the way, I don't know why, but 60 food, I always make a mistake. Every single time, I either forget the 60 of 60 food pylon, or right when it finishes, I just don't make probes for a minute. It's the cursed number. I hate it. But yeah, be hard on yourself. It's good. It's good. It's fun to be hard on yourself. Yeah, because that's the only way that you're ever going to get good. If you sit around going, "Ugh, I'm the best player in the world," you will never be the best player in the world. So I'm going to take a few brief questions, and then we're going to go directly into the Root Gaming Warzone tournament. Yeah, let's go ahead and check that out. Yeah, KZN, who is, of course, always asking great questions, said that Day 9, you said the only thing you thought Huck could have done better was to scout the expansions earlier, but doesn't this imply Junwi's strategy is unstoppable? It seems like if Huck was more proactive with hallucination scouting, he would not have been caught off guard by the Mutalisks. That's such a great point. I almost died choking. That's actually a good point. You can do a lot better spotting with the Mutalisk by using a lot of hallucinations. That's amazing. You just have your hallucinated phoenixes sort of dancing around the edges of your base doing some spotting. What is nice about the using Phoenix Scouts to spot the expansions, a lot of times you can do a slightly better planning for your build orders. You'll notice that Huck didn't have the second Robo done with the Ultralisks. Only after he saw the Ultralisk did he throw down the second Robo. I think a few hallucinated Phoenixes may have helped a little bit. I do think that those 5 expansions would have been mighty hard to stop because the Mutalisks were being so annoying. But as we saw, it's okay to let them get up completely uncontested because as Protoss is climbing up the tech tree and getting that death ball of, Immortals, Zealots, Blinkstalkers, Templar with Storm, as he's getting that death ball up, he knows that he will eventually have a cripplingly big push against the Zerg. So, that's such a great point by KZN. I'm so glad you pointed out the hallucination thing. That is so awesome. Tricky Gilligan says, Dear Day 9, what would you say is the one mistake that lost Huck the game? Was it failure to scout or something later on? There's almost always lots of little things that we can do to improve our play, but I really think that the one key mistake was when this expansion ended up falling. I do think a couple cannons should be thrown down behind there. Because again, if your opponent is doing a lot of multi all over the place attacking, this expansion going down, I think is okay. I think I would have preferred just picking off these creep tumors. But yeah, it's this moment. Yeah, right here at the 33-minute mark. There's a drop that occurs. And let's actually go into the Huck cam. And I know if Huck's watching, oh, he's going to love this. Oh, let's see. Maybe he'll message me and be like, I do love that. Okay, now look at the top of the base, or top of the map. Oh my goodness, there's a drop coming. So Huck ends up warping stuff in, and notice this army on the mini-map now moving up. Come on, give me the Huck cam. Huck is bringing everything up here, and to be honest, if we just count the number of units in these overlords, this is what, 8 Zerglings, let's just go 8 at a time, so there's 16, there's like another 4, alright, cool, there's going to be like 20, 25 units here. Not very much at all, probably less than that, to be honest. Like, this is not that big. We really don't need all these units coming back, but by pulling all those units back, suddenly, the Protoss loses 2 of his expansions. Oh, what a tragedy. This was the one mistake, right? And this is actually a pretty common technique you'll see Zergs do a lot, which is just to go, I'm going to attack here, I'm going to attack there, I'm going to attack here, I'm going to attack there. They kind of just go back and forth, and the instant the Protoss makes one mistake, like puts his army in the wrong place, they just actually kill one off. They kind of just prod. Oh, he made a mistake! And crush him. It makes playing against a good Zerg very intimidating, because you basically say, oh yeah, I just have to make no mistakes. Easy! But another way I want to put it is just that, yeah, you know what? You gotta just play a little bit more defensive and a little bit more, etc.-ish. Let's see here. One more thing. Two more things. Parasite01 says, Dear Day 9, as the metagame for Zerg develops... By the way, I just refuse to read the word metagame anymore. It says, Dear Day 9, do you foresee Zergs making proxy XXX buildings with overlords, spewing creep in random spots on the map to throw off their opponents? We saw Junwi do this to an extent with the Spire hidden in the corner of his main. Yeah, I think that can't possibly be bad. I think that players actually probably should be a little more proactive about it. Actually, Protoss should be more proactive about that. Just spreading things out because it doesn't matter where your warp gates are. That's actually pretty damn good. So absolutely, definitely think so. Netaro asks, we're going to take this last question. He says, Dear Day 9, what would have been a better late game unit composition for Zerg, or was the unit composition not a problem? I actually have been trying to do a lot of thinking on like the late game Zerg mix, because a 200 food Zerg is just not that much food. Broodlords are great, but I'm kind of leaning a little bit towards Ultra Hydra Zergling. I like that mix a lot because the Zerglings deal damage pretty fast, Hydra will steal damage really fast, and Ultralists just kind of goop things up quite a bit. But you know, I haven't been to the late game very often. Generally, the way I prefer to play the late game is to do a lot of harassy type things. I still do a lot of like crackling roach business in the late game with a lot of Nidus worming. I think, because again, I totally know from having played Brood War Zerg for 12 years that prodding here, prodding there, prodding here, prodding there. Oh, he made a mistake? Cool, I get a free base. Like that still is my mindset when I play Zerg, so I don't really know what the best... Here's my army. Move it on over. Probably some later infestors, because Zerg doesn't have any other spellcasters. I don't really know other things to do. Maybe that's actually going to be a new... Ooh, okay, so how about this? What Junwi really would have done to benefit himself is when he had like 4k, 3k, just get 20 Overseers and just run around trying to contaminate every single building. And then that'll really help your 300 food push. I mean, I say that all the time. Zerg in StarCraft 2 needs to do a 300 food push. For any of you who don't know what a 300 food push is, it's when you're at 200, 200, and you attack and you rally with like 80 larvae and 4,000 in the bank. And then you just hold down the Z button or hold down the R button, so you kind of always stay maxed. And in the end, you've thrown 300 food worth of unit at your opponent. Why not do like 300 food pushes plus contaminate? You get like all your Overseers, all your whatever units you have, start sending them, send the Overseers elsewhere, and just like goop, 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 get every single building, re-goop it up, and then just keep 300 food pushing. That is kick-ass. I want to do that more often. Oh my god, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap up this daily. Holy crap, that is so good. Guys, tell me I'm awesome. Yeah. That is so awesome. All right, I am going to go ahead and wrap this daily up. Don't go anywhere, because the Root Gaming Tournament's coming up now. Oh! So, stay. I'll be back. I'm going to get some water, but I will see you soon. Dum, dum, duh.